In local matters, the former governor of Virginia is one step closer to getting his old job back. Terry McAuliffe won the Democratic primary for the state's top position last night with 62% of the vote. Now he'll focus on the general election against Republican businessman Glenn Youngkin, a political newcomer. Jeff Schapiro is a politics columnist at the Richmond Times-Dispatch, and he's been covering this race, and he's here to talk more about it with us. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. So, tell us about Terry McAuliffe. How did he end up winning by such a huge margin? Why does he even want the job back? What was he like the first time around?
Well, the first time around, he barely won. That was 8 years ago. He was elected by plurality. He had a fairly contentious first term. I use that word advisedly because we still have an election to go through, battling with a Republican-dominated legislature. He flirted with the idea of seeking the presidency, maybe even dabbling in national affairs as a member of the Biden cabinet. But in the end, he decided he wanted to stand for governor again, enjoying executive power and considering the possibility that he might be serving, if elected, with a Democratic legislature, if the Democratic majority should stand, to be in a position to make some fairly dramatic and significant changes in a state that the outside world considers tradition bound. To your question about that big vote, this guy is known. The Macker is running essentially as everyone's neighbor. His billboards and his yard sign, rather than include his last name, emphasize his first name. So he's running as someone you know, and that was reflected in the breadth of the victory. 2 and 3 votes falling to him. He carried every locality in the state in a 5-way field in a fairly heavily attended primary. Certainly a reminder that Democrats remain jazzed up in Virginia, even with Trump out of the White House.
More than 482,000 people voted in the Democratic primary last night. That's a pretty significant number. What does that turnout tell you? I'm specifically curious to know what it tells you about 2022.
Well, the big turnout, as I said, is an indication of Democratic enthusiasm. That was a big worry heading into the primary. Again, with Trump out of the way, would the party be as animated? I think that question has been settled with this fairly robust turnout. By the way, contrast the turnout in the Democratic primary with the participation in the Republican convention that nominated Glenn Youngkin. 30,000 votes were cast by Republicans, approaching 500,000 by Democrats. I think the Democrats will argue, and I think credibly so, that this is a measure of the breadth of support in Virginia for Democrats, but that it was McAuliffe who was nominated over a field in which he was steadily attacked from the left, is a reminder that when Democrats vote at large in this state, Democrats tend to be more centrist than progressive, to use the term of the day. What this also means going forward is that this election, this McAuliffe-Youngkin matchup, as one of only 2 statewide elections in the country, New Jersey elects a governor as well, will be viewed as a mini referenda on what's going on in Washington or not. There is this curse that we've seen in Virginia every year except one since 1976. The party that wins the governorship loses the presidency. That was disrupted in 2013 when McAuliffe was elected governor, again the first time after Barack Obama was returned to the presidency.
So McAuliffe's going to be running in the general election against the Republican nominee, who's a businessman, Glenn Youngkin. He's a political newcomer, but he's got really deep pockets. He wasted no time releasing ads last night that attacked McAuliffe. I want to play one of them.
Terry McAuliffe is not inspiring.
Failed to keep his promises.
So we don't get change by recycling the same old policies and politicians of the past.
Terry McAuliffe would talk about going big and bold, but when he had his chance, he left most Virginians behind.
He failed the people of Virginia. So why does he deserve a second chance?
The future versus the past.
We need a new leader who will move Virginia forward and not back.
A new kind of leader to bring a new day to Virginia. I'm Glenn Youngkin, candidate for governor, and I sponsored this ad.
Well, that's nice and easy. Just sort of slice and dice. I believe it's what some of the other, the other people running for his position had to say about him. They were also going after each other on Twitter even before last night. Does this indicate that you will be typing very furiously from now until November because these two are going to be going after each other?
Well, it'll be negative attention, but it'll be attention nonetheless. If you are Glenn Youngkin, running in a state that is bluing as Virginia is, you're going to need the votes of independents and some Democrats to win. And so Youngkin has to thread the needle. On one hand, he has to be loyal to the Republican base, which expects fealty to Trump. On the other hand, he doesn't want to look too cozy with the Trump ilk, because that's going to turn off voters in the suburbs where the majority of votes are in this state. In a lifetime, Virginia has been transformed from a rural-dominated state to a suburban-dominated state in which the majority of people who live here came here from somewhere else and have brought with them, increasingly, more moderate politics.
During his victory speech last night, McAuliffe spent a good amount of time drawing parallels between Youngkin and former President Trump. I want to play some of that sound.
And Donald Trump has said that Youngkin, and I quote, has my complete and total endorsement. We cannot let Glenn Youngkin do to Virginia what Donald Trump has done to our country. We cannot allow it.
So, for our viewers who may not be familiar with the politics of either Terry McAuliffe or Mr. Youngkin, how close are Youngkin's politics to Trump's, and where does he fall on the political spectrum?
Well, one of the most telling measures, at least within the Republican ranks, of Youngkin's fealty to Trump is his hesitation for a good deal of time to acknowledge the legitimacy of Joe Biden's victory. He finally said, well, Biden's in the White House. He's our president. But there's a lot of wink and nod to the, if you will, big lie, because Youngkin needs those votes. This is going to be, as I said, a fairly tricky campaign for Youngkin. It's not out of the question. If turnout falls, as it tends to in these off years, the smaller, more disciplined Republican vote can have a disproportionate influence. P.S. Checking around yesterday with folks up in Northern Virginia on activities, turnout, that sort of thing, one heard Democrats referring to Youngkin as Trumpkin.
Well, the nickname has already started.
Yeah, it really has. Jeff Schapiro, thank you as always. We appreciate it.
Thank you.